Hey guys, so as you know, I've been MIA. Unfortunately, I've been really busy with schoolwork and all that. You know how it gets. But I decided we're gonna get back into creating awesome content for you. And we're gonna start it off with a Fuego Chipotle chicken taco. We're gonna start by making our own homemade chicken stock for the rice. All I'm doing is taking leftover rotisserie chicken scraps and putting them on a sheet pan. Then I'm brushing on a little bit of Sofrito to give it a nice Mexican flavor, and I'm putting it in the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 20 minutes. Now we're gonna chop some celery, carrots, and onions to add a subtle earthiness to our chicken stock. I also added in the stems of a cilantro bunch that we're going to be using for our rice and pico de gallo. Now we'll add in our roasted chicken scraps and just enough water to cover everything. And once all that comes to a boil, you can turn the heat down, let it simmer just for a few hours until it's really nice and flavorful. And chicken, the main star of our show. We're going to be using 2 pounds of chicken thighs. And for our marinade, a red onion, a can of adobo sauce from the Chipotle's and adobo you find at the store, 5 cloves of minced garlic, 1 teaspoon of adobo, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1.5 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of oregano, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and if you're feeling spicy, 1/2 teaspoon of chili powder to feel that burn. And now I'm blending all those ingredients together in my little Ninja, and I also decided to add a little bit of honey just to increase that oomph factor. And finally, I'm just stabbing my thighs with a fork because that will really incorporate the marinade within. I'm just gently massaging the chicken with the marinade until it is all nicely coated, and we can just cover it, put it away for a few hours. Bye-bye. Pico de Gallo, easiest possible topping to make. All you have to do is quarter a Roma tomato, cut out the flesh, and then I would highly advise that you throw it into the chicken stock, that way you're not wasting it, and then just simply cut the tomato into even uniform squares. Then we'll just want to dice half of a red onion, and that's basically 90% of the work done. We have our tomatoes and onions, and we're just going to put them away for now, and we'll add in our lime and everything else later on. Next, we're going to make a corn topping inspired by elote. It's a Mexican street style corn that it just reminds me of summer. I really wish I could be on the beach eating some elote right now. But it's really simple. You're just gonna cut the kernels off of the cob, and I'm only using 4 ears of corn. So now that we cut our corn, we have some lovely strips of bacon that we're adding. And we're gonna basically saute them off together. We'll start with the bacon, we'll cook some onions in the bacon fat, we'll add our corn, and we're gonna have a delicious little taco topping that we're gonna add. So I'm gonna cut this down really nice and fine. You just wanna cut the strips down. Let's say we're gonna cut these little strips into thirds, just like this. And if you are having trouble cutting meat, you can always freeze it a little bit. That way it's firmer and just an easier cut, so you're not like, you know, struggling too much. Now I'm just gonna cut this into little bits. So we have bacon bits we're gonna be rendering down, and we'll cook it easier, more evenly. We're gonna add that to a pan, but first I wanna quickly cut a little onion because I love the flavor of onions in all my dishes. It just adds that little oomph, you know, when you caramelize them down, get a little natural sweetness, Maillard reaction. It's delicious, so I'm just thinly slicing them. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so we got all of our little prep for our little corn topping. We're gonna get our pan nice and hot, and we could just add the bacon in right away. You don't have to wait for it to get too hot because it's rendering down and it's gonna evenly cook that way. Doesn't have to sizzle. And we'll let that cook until it's nice and crispy and delicious. Right, so yeah, surprisingly, this is all we got out of the bacon, and that's gonna be put aside. We have the bacon fat right here, and I'm gonna take our onions and add it right to the bacon fat, nice and hot like that. We'll just mix that down. The onions have caramelized down. I just added in a little bit of the corn. We're gonna mix that all nicely together. Corn always goes really good with butter, so I'm just gonna add in like a little tablespoon just to flavor it up, and we're gonna add in a little bit of our adobo seasoning. Not too much because you got the salt from the bacon. I have a little bit of cumin I wanna add in. Cumin is always great for any Mexican, Hispanic dish. Now this dish is really starting to come alive as we're packing on flavors. Just added back our bacon. We'll let that cook down just for a little bit. Also, because the corn is sweet naturally on its own, so I don't like to tamper with it too much. But I'm just gonna add a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of brown sugar just to make it a little bold. We'll really sweeten it, and we'll just put that final icing on the cake, you know what I'm saying? Remember that chicken stock we had cooking back here, right? I'll ladle that in to actually, look at that, homemade chicken stock. I'm gonna deglaze the pan with it now. And we'll just scrape all those burnt bits and just really get it all nicely incorporated in there to really maximize those flavors. So I added a little bit more chicken stock just to fully deglaze that pan, and this is what we're left with. I'm just gonna add that into it just to really oomph it, you know? I wanna add a little bit of mayo just to give it that perfect texture. So I'm just gonna add a nice little amount. We're just gonna mix that in so it's nice and creamy, you know? Also adding a little bit more cotija cheese. You know, you don't have to go too crazy on all this stuff. Just add to your desire. If you want it more creamy, you'll add a little more mayo. You want more cheese, do it to taste until you really are just satisfied with your product. Now this topping is pretty much complete. That's really good. That is really, really tasty. Now a taco isn't a taco without a tortilla, so you can get them at the store, but I'm gonna show you how to make them homemade. We're gonna grab 2 cups of all-purpose flour, or any flour that you use, and to that I'm adding about a teaspoon of salt just to season it up. We'll just combine it together with a fork, and to that I wanna add 3/4 of a cup of water, along with about 2 tablespoons of olive oil. You can just simply mix that together to combine it. And now we're going to turn the dough onto a floured surface and simply knead it about 8 to 10 times. You don't want to overdo it, and you want to let it rest for at least 20 minutes so it can soften up. Now I divided the dough into 8 pieces, and I'm simply just forming them into little balls, just like so. Now when it comes to rolling out your dough, you want to make sure you can get it as thin as possible. I'm talking about less than a 1/4 inch, like an 1/8. I rolled it a little bit on the thick side, so it's kind of like one of those Taco Bell chalupas, but that is completely fine. And make sure it's really nice and round. That is really important to have a taco. For frying tortillas, normally we would put it in a cast iron skillet, but I don't have one accessible right now, so I'm just simply putting it in a pan with a tiny bit of olive oil because it's a non-stick pan. Alright, so our chicken stock is basically done. If it's too concentrated, you can always add a little bit more water, cook it down. We're just gonna strain it. And all this is pretty much garbage. So just lift that up so you can see. And look at that, very concentrated. This is gonna make the rice extremely flavorful. And if you have enough salt in here, you really don't have to add any salt to the rice. Just pouring a little bit more water over there just to get all that flavor out, really make the most out of your leftover scraps. Okay, so I have 2 cups of that chicken stock that's cooking in onions that I cooked down. It's not necessary because the stock is flavorful enough alone. So I'm gonna add in some rinsed rice, about a cup. We're just gonna quickly mix that in, just get it together. And I'm gonna simply cover it, turn the heat down to a simmer, and we're gonna cook it for 20 minutes. Then I'm gonna saute it with some beans, a little bit of cilantro and lime, we'll call it a day. All right, so after 20 minutes, we're adding the cooked rice to a can of beans that I put on the stovetop, and I'm seasoning it with just half of a lime that I'm squeezing in. You can take a fork and just stab it in the lime and rotate it just to get it out easier. Finally, I'm dividing a bunch worth of cilantro leaves into the rice in our Pico de Gallo. All we have left to do now is grill the chicken, so I'm laying it down diagonally on a preheated grill. For about 2 to 3 minutes, you want to rotate it 90 degrees, flip it, and do the same exact thing on the other side. And now after the chicken has rested for at least 5 minutes to retain maximal juiciness, we're gonna cut into little cubes and start assembling our taco. Now we can start layering on all of our toppings to create the taco. I also added some avocado slices along with a little bit of cotija cheese and dollops of sour cream. And there you have it, a super flavorful recipe to spice up your Taco Tuesdays. I really hope you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as I did making it. Please hit that like button if you really enjoyed it, and also to show your support, I'd really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. It really helps with the algorithm and everything, and it's fee-free. And finally, make sure to leave a comment down below so I can hear your feedback and what you guys have to say. Thank you so much and have a great day.